Dance with a man who's danced with a girl, who's danced with the Prince of Wales.
Greetings from Castle Goring from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Yes, I think I'm taking the opportunity to be somewhat incisive and reflective on certain overarching manners. I think I'm taking the opportunity to be somewhat reflective on certain matters and to not actually ignoring, but so much as keeping in its proper place some of the trivialities that reign supreme. So, without further ado, I am going to plunge in with what Anne Roy has to say, because this is actually an important point that she makes. Rachel seems to forget that Queen Elizabeth was, and King Charles now is, the monarch for the Commonwealth, which is 21.13% of all land masses and 33.71% of the world's population. Anne Roy, thanks for refocusing one's attention on the opportunistic way in which Meghan and Harry have behaved towards the Commonwealth and capitalized upon their former place in the institution of the monarchy to try to rebrand themselves as the world's royal couple and the answer to everybody's prayers, because there is the royal family in Britain and there are Harry and Meghan in California. Practically a quarter of the world's landmass. And that means that nearly 40 to 50% of the populated landmass of the world is Commonwealth. And over a third of the world's population is also Commonwealth. And contrary to Harry and Meghan's propaganda that the Commonwealth is Empire 2.0 or Mach 2 or a repeat of, and that, remember the accusation made in the Netflix show that basically the Commonwealth is white people's recalibration of the empire so that rich white people can still continue to steal from poor black people and steal the wealth of all those rich black countries full of poor black people, while the British and white people are just stealing, which of course is nonsense, because the last four members of the Commonwealth aren't even formally British. So, interesting. But I thought we'd focus on that because it's important, because it shows that the Commonwealth is a rich hunting ground for predators to seek out and devour prey if they can get away with it. Susan Ableton says, "Good morning, Lady C. Good afternoon. Greetings from Canada and scratches and hugs for your babies. They are right here beside me and they are chilling, so I'm not even going to disturb them, although I am stroking one of them." A question. Having watched some more recent documentaries on Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson, the allegations were that Edward ended up being treated very badly by Wallis, who supposedly was quite cruel to him. He seemed so obsessed it never seemed to change anything. He also seemed to be a person who accepted, and may I say in a twisted way, enjoyed this kind of treatment. Do you not think that history is very much repeating itself? Both Edward and Harry seem to share many traits. Can you comment? Thank you. Well, Susan Ableton, first of all, I call him David, not Edward. He was King Edward VIII, but he was known socially as David and within the family as David. And so, if you don't mind, I will refer to him as David. So it's David and Harry. Wallis made no bones about the fact. She used to say it quite often, that being one half of one of the great romances of history was extremely hard work and anything but glamorous. She never wanted to marry him. She loved her husband Ernest. What went radically wrong with her plan was that one of her best friends, Mary Kirk Raffray, fell in love with Ernest Simpson. And she and David used his relationship with Wallis as a way of getting Ernest Simpson and Wallis to be divorced so that David could marry Wallis and Mary could marry Ernest, which indeed she did. They had a son and she died very shortly afterwards. If I remember correctly, she died of cancer. I seem to remember that she actually had a brain tumor, but I could be wrong there because I'm trying to retrieve something out of my memory going back decades. But she did die very shortly after. So they weren't married for more than about 4 years, or anyway, not very long. And their son changed his name from Simpson because the Simpsons were Jewish, and he now has a Jewish name and a Jewish identity. So Wallis was married to a Jew. Interesting, no? Because Mary Kirk, to the best of my knowledge, was not Jewish. So, in fact, the son was only Jewish as a result of Ernest being Jewish in heritage. I think he was a practicing Protestant. So, let me see. I don't want to waffle on too much. Because Wallis was fond of David, And she loved him, but she loved, and she made no bones about it, the position. She loved being the mistress of the Prince of Wales and then the King of Britain. She had no desire to marry him. And her worst nightmare came to be when she married this simpering, whimpering man-child. She and Ernest used to refer to him as Peter Pan, the perennial child. She was trapped into marrying David as well. She tried to get him to stay on the throne, and she really did sincerely mean for him to stay on the throne, because she didn't want to marry him. She didn't want him around her constantly. And this is what she ended up having. Was she cruel at times? Yes, she was. She was very sharp. She was very dominating, but he loved her being dominating. And ironically enough, she was not dominating with either Ernest or her first husband. So isn't that interesting? I think his name was Win Spencer, and she wasn't dominating with either of them. But I suppose if you're not a goddess, you don't regard yourself as a goddess, and you are in a relationship with a man, really because of all of the perks, and you're fond of him in a sort of idle, abstract almost way. He's like a little kitty that purrs occasionally. That's great. But to marry that, I can well see why she found him irritating. But he absolutely loved being humiliated, put down. One of the things that attracted him to her was that she treated him, as he put it, as just another man. In fact, she treated him with a disdain that people found quite astonishing, especially when he was Prince of Wales and King. And he loved it. Something very masochistic going on there. Harry and Meghan. Well, we have to be careful what we say for legal reasons. But Harry is very much the submissive, and Meghan is very much the dominatrix. So there are parallels between the Sussexes and the Windsors, right there. Meghan also, I am told by people who have witnessed this, can treat Harry in the most disdainful way possible. And there are glimpses of it, even when they were in Britain functioning in the public. She could be quite disdainful and sharp and schoolmarmish with him. What does that tell you? Does that tell you that there was great love there? Well, of course, Wallis filled her end of the bargain exemplarily, because she ran an absolutely superb royal ship. She and he were more royal than any of the other royals. Everything was impeccably done. Everything was at the high standard. They were the ending chic. She was the world's greatest hostess. Meghan, she's not a great hostess. Wallis had style and dignity. Meghan lacks style and has no dignity. But are there parallels between the two couples? I would have to say I see a discomforting amount of parallels between them, but one significant difference. Wallis was very honest and straightforward, even in her autobiography, about the fact that, she was in it for the royal way of life. And she didn't want to be an exiled royal. She wanted to be a part of the whole royal panoply. Meghan, no. Meghan doesn't have the imagination. Meghan also is greedy. Meghan is also tacky. She came in and thought, gosh, I can make this work for me. Yeah, I can make a shed load of money out of this. Now, all I have to do is get him out of the system. Well, of course, at first she tried to get the system to work for her, cutting all sorts of deals on the side that the palace kept on stymieing her over. And when she realized there was no way she was going to be able to function at the financial level that she intended to, she encouraged him to chuck. So Wallis and David's dream was to come back to England as the most junior members of the immediate branch of the royal family. And that was dismantled after the abdication. So I hope that answers it. Anna Ig says, I may be naive as I know nothing, but I thought if you joined the royal family, they do a thorough check into your background, etc. Why wasn't me Gaines' background checked, for goodness sake? It was checked. It was checked thoroughly. There are no secrets. Take it from me. There are no secrets where Meg's baby is concerned. Everybody who examined Meg's baby's background had full knowledge of all of her activities. And Meghan has been a very ambitious and resourceful operator. And they knew everything, absolutely everything. But what were they going to do about it? Meghan was determined to nail Harry, and did. She certainly nailed him to her cross. And she made sure that the nails would stick, because within a week of the relationship going public, and may I point out that on the day that the relationship went public, gratis the Sunday Express and a leak from the palace, and you can use your imagination to know in whose interest it was for the leak to have been made. That same day, all the American publications were fed information about Meghan that was positive information. That means that Meghan had to have had all her ducks in a row so that when the genie went flip, all the ducks went quack, 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 and functioned exactly as they should have. Notwithstanding that fact, by the end of that week, Meghan insisted with Harry that Jason Knopf do the press are racist and they are sexist. Well, of course they were going to be sexist. It was a man and a woman. What's the surprise there? And as for being racist, they were not being racist, but she played the race card. And once she played that race card, and once she had Harry hook, line, and sinker, they used to say at the palace, Harry follows her around like a puppy. And, oh, Megs, can I have a BJ, please? Can I have a BJ? Oh, Megs, I need a BJ, And they used to call him BJ's Harry. Flagrant. The whole thing was flagrant and pathetic. But she had set up the situation whereby if anybody exposed anything that she didn't want them to expose, and there was a lot that people could have criticized had they chosen to, and rarely had they been brave enough to. There was plenty of material, but because she had played the race card and everybody was terrified of being accused of being racist, when Harry asked the Queen and Prince Philip was there, I am told, for permission to marry Meghan. It's in both versions of my book, Meghan and Harry, the Real Story, and Meghan and Harry, the Real Story, Persecutors or Victims, the updated version. Prince Philip tried to talk him out of it, and he erupted, and when he erupted, the Queen tried to intervene, at which point Harry, according to my information, informed her that they would be accused of racism if they did not go along with his plans. That's what happened. The race card was played from the very outset. So, and also, nobody believed or expected or could actually have imagined that this little hustling nonentity who had hustled her way into a palace was actually going to have the temerity to nevertheless tell lies about the way she was treated by the royal family, by the people at the palace, and by the British nation. And moreover, that not only would she brazenly tell lies, but that she would present herself as a victim, and again, just brazenly lying. So to this day, an awful lot that is known has been sat upon because they were all terrified of being accused of racism, because as the point was made at the beginning of this, that the Queen and King Charles are the heads of a Commonwealth that effectively takes up about 40% or 40-something percent of the occupied land masses on this earth, and over a third of the world's population, many of whom are people of colour. They didn't want to take the chance. And a monarchy survives by being prudent and by being cautious and by not exposing itself to needless danger. And the thinking was that Meghan was a viper, that as long as she was in the royal cage, they would be able to control her. Well, Hindenburg and Ludendorff made the same mistake with Adolf Hitler. Oh, we can control the little corporal. And they couldn't. Well, the palace and the royal family have found out they can't control Meghan. The difficulty where Meghan is concerned is she can't control herself either. And that's her downfall. So I hope that answers the question. Lady Ferguson says, I remember, and I think this is a lady of colour. I remember how bad Meg was towards her dad. Meg refused to let her dad go to her wedding for minor things or no reason at all. The minor reasons she gave could easily have been resolved. Now Meg treats the royals the same way, making minor things into major things, causing rifts. Lydia Ferguson, thank you so much for that. I love when my people of colour say it as it is and no pussyfooting around. That's a very Jamaican way of behaving. I don't think she's Jamaican. In fact, I'm pretty sure she can't be Jamaican, otherwise she'd have mentioned it, because most of the Jamaicans mention to me that they're Jamaican. But it's a very Jamaican way of dealing with things. Colour blindness. Nothing to do with colour, everything to do with character. What Meghan did to her father was and will always be inexcusable. Yes, he was trying to preserve his dignity. At the time, it looked as if he was behaving tackily. Well, now that it emerges that the paparazzo was a long-standing colleague of Meghan's before, during, and after. He has been a member of the Meghannians' cabal long before the wedding and remains so to this day, and features, and his organization even features with credits in their Netflix series. And both Thomas Markle Sr. and Samantha believe that her father was set up because Meghan's paparazzo colleague got in touch with Samantha and convinced Samantha that this would be a very good thing and gave her all sorts of assurances that they would never be found out, and broke every assurance and made absolutely sure that they were found out. And they believe that that Thomas Markle was stitched up. And I don't even need to tell you who they think was the architect of the stitch up, because let's remember the paparazzo was functioning as a professional, but he wasn't the person who had a motive for stitching up Thomas Markle. But even if he had been guilty as charged, which he wasn't, what he did was a very understandable error of judgment. And the way things developed, Harry and Meghan, even after that, kept in touch with him. They only ceased being in touch with him after he survived his heart attacks. Members of the Markle family believe that she was hoping he wouldn't survive the attack. Now, that's pretty heavy-duty stuff to even believe and to have grounds for suspicion. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating, because it's only after he survived the heart attacks that Harry and Meghan cut him off totally. There is no excuse. And I know what they tried to manipulate me into believing was a reason for the extremity of their actions. And I don't believe it for a second, because Meghan's conduct contradicts everything, and Harry's, since Netflix and during Netflix, has also contradicted any belief I had that Harry might have actually believed the story I was being fed about Thomas Markle. Yes, you're absolutely right, Lydia Ferguson. It was a very minor thing that she and he has gone along with it, blew up out of all proportion so that she wouldn't have to be bothered to deal with her father now that he was of no further use to her. That's my belief. And if she thinks I'm being unfair, Megsy baby, sue me, sue me, sue me. You think I'm defaming you? Sue me. I'll see you in court with all sorts of witnesses that you will find inconvenient. So please feel free to sue me if you think I'm defaming you, because I know who I believe, and I know what I believe, and I believe things going off law conduct. And of course, she takes grains of sand and blows them into mountains and expects people to accept that a grain of sand is a mountain. Well, only brain-dead idiots and uneducated people like her Sussex squad would believe any of that rubbish. A grain of sand is a grain of sand, and a mountain is something of entirely different proportions. Luxie says, "Thank you, Lady C. I'm from South Africa. You hit the nail on the head when you talked about tribalism. Unfortunately, here in South Africa, the black people will rather vote for whomever leads their tribe than for common sense. Zuma is Zulu, so here in KwaZulu-Natal, one of the 9 provinces, The Zulus voted for him and his new party, MK. Never mind the fact that he has been found guilty of multiple corruption charges, etc. In 2021, this province had riots when the police tried to arrest Zuma after the courts found him guilty. He said that he would rather see South Africa burn than go to jail. So that is what his followers did. They looted, burned, and killed. We couldn't leave our houses. We couldn't go to work. Businesses were burnt to the ground and have never reopened. Jobs were lost. Needless to say, he is still a free man, running for president, which is against our constitution. But now the MK party plan on going to court so that Zuma can become president again, should more idiots vote him in. Under his rule, he basically sold South Africa to the Chinese. Manufacturing in KwaZulu-Natal basically died. Obviously, the Zuma family became very rich. KwaZulu-Natal is one of the most corrupt provinces. It's filthy dirty. Our sea, the Indian Ocean, is full of E. coli and is unsafe to swim in. Our tap water is undrinkable. There are no jobs, but the ABC, EFF, and MK, after 30 years of ANC rule, will still bring up apartheid to get votes. They tell their followers that the white man will bring back apartheid. Common sense has left the country and corruption rules. Sadly, many of the former British colonies and other colonies, incidentally, have similar stories to tell, where corruption is accepted as long as it is done by a certain sort of person. So it's not okay for a white person to be corrupt, but it's okay for a black person to be corrupt. Well, this is racism of the highest order. It's also stupid. But this is the reality. And this is why when people play the race card as dangerously as Meghan has played it, Harry plays it as well. Diane Abbott, whom I like, she plays it. Ngozi Fulani, she plays it as well. I would be very interested to know if someone, because her sister space is for women of certain nationalities, I would be very interested to know if I pitched up there seeking refuge, if they would let me in. Somehow I suspect not. There's too much race card playing at the moment. It is divisive and it should be brought to a halt. And the only way it's ever going to be brought to a halt is with people objecting to it being used. Sue Brown says, "It would be impossible for me to believe that Meghan would sincerely reconcile with her father. She's become repugnant to me. It's not that I'm unable to forgive her if she were genuine. It's my view that she's an empty vessel and very dangerous. I think she may be literally incapable of normal human emotion. Is there a name for that?" There is, and I am going to read out what Assis said, because this is the answer. Sociopath, quote, manipulative people who totally lack a social conscience and exploit other people for their own gain, end of quote. Well, Samantha Cohen did make the point that Meghan was a narcissistic sociopath. Several other people have made the point that Meghan's behaviour is that of a true sociopath, as well as a narcissist. Nobody who has treated her father the way she has treated him can possibly have any excuse for having behaved the way she has done. The woman is beyond the pale. The woman is a shanker on the posterior of society, and she should be excised from civilized life because she has nothing to offer that is in any way, shape, or form positive, save as a dreadful warning of what that sort of character is about. Meghan has a purpose. Meghan has a use in life. Meghan has a reason that is excusable. It's not that she is excusable. It is that the lessons she teaches us, the light she shines because of her appalling behaviour and because of her disgusting character and because of her reprehensible and abusive choices. She has shone a light on what is truly awful and undesirable about people who hustle and muscle and mooch and smooch their way up the ladder when ultimately they are literally the lowest of the low, with nothing really in an elevating manner to offer spiritually. They are poisonous, and she is poisonous. She, for all her virtues, she is truly repellent, and people have recognized it, and that is the benefit that she is to society. She is a walking, talking warning of what a human being should not be. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be addressing. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless and goodbye. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.